Julian, some of my friends who are theists, they may be scientists or theologians or philosophers, when they look at the new atheism, they would say that is just as much a faith as what we have as theists. How do you react to that?
Yeah, I get tired of that claim that atheism is a faith. I mean, it could be, but it normally isn't. What does it mean to say something is a faith? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean to believe something in the absence of 100% proof. I mean, I don't have 100% proof that, my water isn't poisoned or that, my wife isn't having an affair or something like that. It doesn't mean it's faith. Or if it is faith, then it's a lesser faith. Now, the faith of religion is a real trust in something, in the knowing in the absence, not just of proof, but conclusive evidence. All the great stories of faith in the Bible, for example, are about great leaps. It's Abraham trusting that he should kill his own son because he's had some messenger who claims to be from God. This is, from a rational point of view, crazy. He's going way beyond the evidence. He's trusting in something he believes in God. What about doubting Thomas, for example? Doubting Thomas, he didn't have faith. Why not? Because he did what every reasonable person would ask, which is to say, look, you said that someone has risen from the dead. That just doesn't happen. I'm not going to believe it till you give me proof, right? And so he didn't have faith. He was only being reasonable. Faith, as Kierkegaard, I think, really saw it, true religious faith, if it has value, it's because it's a trust which lacks a good evidential ground. Now, in atheism, all you're saying is, in the absence of evidence, strong evidence as we see it, for belief in a God, we don't have a belief in God. That doesn't require a trust or a belief. It requires you just to stick to only what the evidence tells you.
Well, there are two kinds of atheists. One so-called weak atheist, I think, which is what you described, saying we don't have evidence to believe in God, to the strong atheist who says, I affirm that there is no God. So you would classify yourself then as a weak atheist, pardon any connotation that comes to
mind. Well, I would affirm there is no God on the basis that there is no evidence that there is a God. Now, all I'm saying is that's not a dogmatic position. I think the key difference for me is not whether someone is basically saying, I don't believe there is a God, or simply, I don't think there's any evidence there's a God. It's how dogmatic or certain one is. To me, yes. If proof comes along tomorrow there's a God, fine. So in that sense, I don't think there is conclusive evidence there is no God. But it is rational, in the absence of any strong evidence for the existence of something, to go along with the defeasible, we say, belief in philosophy, the belief that could be overturned if further evidence comes up, that such a thing does not exist. In the absence of evidence that there's a dog in your fridge or an elephant in your fridge, you believe there is no elephant in your fridge. Okay. You don't say, I just withhold judgment.
So on my definitions then, may I classify you as a weak atheist?
I think on your definitions that's probably right.
Okay, so now we go to the next stage, is what then is the default position? Because you're saying that I wake up and now prove to me there is a God. Now some theologians would say the opposite. I wake up, I see everything, and prove to me there's no God. Now, do you think those are equivalent positions?
Absolutely not equivalent, because you don't need to prove there's no God. You don't, in the absence of evidence that something exists, you don't need to prove that it doesn't exist. If you come into this room, for example, you wouldn't say, prove to me there's no elephant in this room. You've got no reason to think there's an elephant in this room.
Well, suppose there were elephant droppings in the room.
Oh, sure. If there were elephant droppings in the room, you might think, hey, there has been an elephant in this room at some point or something. But, but nevertheless, some things are more clear-cut than others. But the point is...
So some would see, I don't want to say elephant droppings in the universe, kind of a mixed metaphor here, but some would see evidence in the world that there is some sort of a transcendent being, creator.
Right, okay, so some people see evidence for God's existence, sure. Well, let's give another example. Let's say we come into this room. We see lots of things which seem to us to be evidence that there's a cat in this house. We see a cat flap, we see a cat basket, we see cat poo and all these kind of things. We think, well, there's a cat, right? So there's prima facie evidence there's a cat. But then it's explained to us, if we look around and we see that actually this is a film set and there is no cat here, these are just all props that were put there for the sake of a film, then all the reasons we had to believe there's a cat here are gone. And so we should believe well, with no reason to believe there is a cat, we should believe there isn't, okay? Now, that doesn't mean we're absolutely 100% certain, but we live our lives and we wake up each day on the assumption there's no cat here. I think it's the same kind of thing with God. There are lots of reasons which, if you look at them, you might think, wow, this is an amazing world. It seems to have been created, seems to have been designed, which look like they're reasons to think there's a God. But then when you go through them one by one, you find actually none of them are good reasons to believe there's God. So all those reasons go out of the window. You're left with no reasons. You then have to live your life on the assumption that there is no God. I think being open to being shown you're wrong, but you can't keep waking up each morning and asking the question as if, hey, I wonder if there is one again, because you've been through the reasons, you've seen there's no reason to believe in it. So you don't, the default position then is there's no God. I could be wrong, but there's no God.
So why do so many philosophers of religion who are theists look to this new atheism as a new faith? It has something to do with one of the arguments that for long periods of time in human history, belief in God was the default position. And now there's this change. I think that's very faulty reasoning, because obviously we know a great deal now than we knew then. But do you see a change in recent times in terms of the approach of atheists today?
I think one of the reasons why people are so willing to think that atheism is a faith position is that a lot of the most vocal atheists have expressed their beliefs, I think, in too dogmatic and certain terms. And so therefore, in that sense, it does seem to be a matter of faith, because they're going beyond the evidence, right? They're claiming a kind of a certainty, and they're claiming a certainty about the idiocy of the opposition, which is too strong. So I think people are acting as though it were a faith. They're acting with a kind of conviction and dogmatism, which is faith-like. And that means when people say, hey, it's a faith position, the accusation kind of sticks. So I think it's excessive confidence on the part of some atheists, which has invited this misinterpretation, because properly understood, there should be no question that atheism is not about faith.